A haunting secret surgery, a hidden tattoo. Jimin's world shatters when he discovers what Taehyung and Jungkook kept from him all along. You weren't supposed to see that. The surgical scar ran diagonally across Taehyung's chest like a phantom whisper, ugly, raw, and unforgiving. Jimin froze, his breath caught halfway between disbelief and devastation. The hotel bathroom door was still ajar, the steam curling out in ghostly tendrils. The mirror was fogged, but not enough to hide the truth anymore. Taehyung turned half-naked with the towel slung low on his waist, water dripping from his hair, but his eyes said everything. Shame, guilt, and something worse, acceptance. Jimin stepped back like he'd been struck. When? His voice trembled, barely rising above a whisper, yet it shattered everything in the room. Taehyung didn't answer, he didn't need to. Outside, the Tokyo skyline blinked with indifferent lights, unaware of the implosion happening behind that penthouse window. It had been 43 days since they last saw Jungkook, 43 days since he vanished after that disastrous after-party in Busan. No calls, no texts, no word. And now this, Taehyung's silent scar, a piece of a puzzle Jimin didn't even know existed. The air felt wrong, electric, tense. There was a sound, low, rhythmic thudding, and Jimin realized it was his own heartbeat pounding against his ribs like fists on a locked door. You said you were going on vacation, Jimin muttered, his voice cracking. You disappeared for 3 weeks and said you just needed time to rest. You lied to me. Taehyung wrapped the towel tighter around his waist, turning his back. The act was small, but it screamed, I can't face you. Why would you do this without telling me? Jimin's voice was climbing now, anguish bleeding into rage. You had surgery, you god T, what the hell did they do to you? There was a pause so long it felt like the world was holding its breath. Then Taehyung answered, voice barely audible. I had to, I couldn't let it spread. The sentence hung in the air like smoke, impossible to grasp. Jimin blinked, spread. I didn't want to be remembered like that, Taehyung added, still facing away. Not by you, not by anyone. Jimin's knees gave out and he slumped onto the edge of the hotel bed, his hands trembling uncontrollably. Memories flooded in, Taehyung coughing in rehearsal, the way he flinched when hugged too tightly, the sudden weight loss he brushed off as dieting for a role. You were dying, Jimin's voice was hollow now, emptied of all fight. And then, just when he thought he couldn't handle any more, the knock came. 3 knocks, then silence. Taehyung tensed. Jimin stood, moving toward the door with a mechanical kind of dread. He opened it slowly. There stood Jungkook. His hoodie was soaked with rain, his eyes rimmed with sleepless shadows, and on the side of his neck, just under the edge of his jawline, the faint curve of black ink peeked through. A tattoo, one Jimin had never seen before. Hi, Taehyung, Jungkook whispered, his voice fragile. We need to talk. Jimin's stomach twisted. His eyes flicked from Jungkook's haunted expression to the ink curling up his neck like a secret unraveling itself. What did you do? He breathed. Jungkook's jaw clenched. The tattoo was clearer now, an ornate dagger through a bleeding lily. I did what I had to, he said, for Taehyung. Jimin's world collapsed in slow motion. The rain outside intensified, a torrential downpour hammering the windows like some divine judgment. But inside, time had stopped. 3 broken men stood surrounded by secrets they no longer had the strength to keep hidden. And just like that, everything changed. You lied to me, Jimin hissed, stepping away from the doorway as Jungkook entered like a shadow returning to haunt its own home. The door clicked shut behind him, a sound so final it felt like the slamming of a coffin. I didn't lie, Jungkook said, pulling down his hoodie. His black hair stuck to his forehead from the rain and his eyes, once so warm, now looked carved from obsidian. I just didn't tell you, that's different. Different? Jimin's voice broke with disbelief. You vanished for over a month, Jungkook. You erased yourself from our lives, then you show up with this. He gestured to the fresh tattoo, still raw and red at the edges, and act like I'm supposed to understand. It wasn't about you, Jungkook snapped. Then who was it about? Jimin shot back. Taehyung. Silence. Taehyung, still standing by the fogged mirror, finally turned. His eyes locked with Jungkook in a look that spoke 1,000 things: pain, betrayal, history. Jimin saw it all in that glance, and it hit him harder than any confession. You knew, Jimin whispered. You knew about the surgery, you were there. I paid for it, Jungkook admitted. Jimin recoiled like he'd been slapped. You what? I paid for it, the private hospital, the specialist, the post-op treatment, everything. He needed help and no one else knew what to do. Jimin looked between the two of them, his closest friends, his family, and suddenly felt like a stranger in a foreign script. So while I was going insane trying to call both of you, while I thought maybe Taehyung had overdosed or maybe you had gotten into a car crash, he laughed bitterly. You two were in on this together, secret hospital trips, secret tattoos, secret everything. It wasn't about secrets, Taehyung finally said, his voice hoarse. It was about survival. No, Jimin corrected him, stepping forward. It was about control, about keeping me out. Why, Taehyung, didn't you think I'd want to be there for you? Taehyung flinched but didn't answer. I begged him not to tell you, Jungkook muttered. Of course you did, Jimin barked, his fury mounting. Because that's what you do, right? You vanish, and when you come back, you're not the same person anymore. There's always something under your skin. He paused, eyes narrowing on the tattoo again. Tell me what it means, he demanded. Jungkook tensed. It's a promise, he said after a moment. To who? Taehyung. The room went still. The air turned heavy, like it was thick with smoke and memories neither of them wanted to exhale. A promise for what? Jimin pressed. Jungkook's voice lowered to a tremble, that if the cancer came back, I'd be the one to end it. Taehyung's eyes shut. Jimin felt his knees weaken. No, he whispered, that's not funny. It's not meant to be, Jungkook replied. It wasn't just surgery, they took out part of his lung, Jimin, half. Do you know what it means for a singer, a performer, to live like that? I would have stayed, Jimin whispered, his voice cracking. I would have dropped everything. That's why we didn't tell you, Taehyung said quietly, because you always stay, and I couldn't handle being someone you pitied. Jimin staggered backward. His heart breaking in slow, deliberate pieces. You think I pity you, you arrogant bastard, I love you. The words slipped out before he could stop them. The silence that followed was louder than thunder. Taehyung's expression faltered. He looked at Jimin the way a man might look at the sea after nearly drowning in it, full of awe, full of fear. Jungkook looked away. Jimin felt heat rise to his face, his pulse racing. Forget it, he muttered, turning toward the door. Don't go, Taehyung said. Jimin stopped, hand on the knob. Why not? So you can keep feeding me lies while you die behind my back, so Jungkook can keep playing your savior while I'm left wondering what the hell I did wrong. I didn't ask him to be my savior, Taehyung said. But you let him, Jimin shot back. Jungkook stepped forward. You're right, we should have told you, but you need to understand something, Jimin. What happened, it's not over. We didn't just hide it from you, we're hiding it from everyone, the company, the fans, the press. If this leaks, Taehyung's career is over, maybe ours too. You think I care about careers right now, Jimin said. You think I care about stage lights and fan chants when one of the people I love is standing here with his chest torn open? He turned to Taehyung again. When did you become this person, cold, closed off, willing to let people suffer in silence? Taehyung's eyes were glassy now, since the night the doctor said malignant. The rain outside had stopped, but inside the room the storm only deepened. Jungkook stepped between them, his expression unreadable. We can't fall apart now. You think we're not already broken? Jimin asked. Jungkook looked at him, and for the first time Jimin saw something fractured in his gaze too. A tremble behind the anger, a wound behind the ink. I got this tattoo, he said quietly, because I made a vow, not just for Taehyung, for both of you, that no matter what happens next I'd carry the truth, even if it kills me. Jimin stared at him. You're both insane, he whispered. Taehyung let out a laugh, sharp, bitter but real, probably. And then, with the tension still thick and bodies still trembling, Taehyung stepped forward. His hand brushed Jimin's. You said you love me, he said. I did, Jimin said, unflinching. Is that still true? Jimin met his eyes, and for a long moment neither looked away. I don't know, Jimin finally said, but I think that's the only thing that still feels real. The clock on the wall ticked softly, counting seconds that felt like years. Jungkook walked to the window, staring out over Tokyo. We need to leave tomorrow, he said. There's someone who knows about the surgery, the tattoo, everything. Jimin looked at him. Who? Jungkook turned, his jaw was set like stone. Namjoon. And suddenly, the silence turned deadly again. The air inside the suite dropped several degrees. Namjoon, Jimin repeated, stunned. Kim Namjoon knew about this. Taehyung sat down heavily on the arm of the couch, hands trembling as they ran through his damp hair. Not everything, but enough. Jungkook turned from the window, eyes shadowed, voice low. He knew about the tumor before the surgery. Jimin's jaw clenched, and he didn't tell me. He wanted to, Taehyung said, voice hollow. He came to me the day I collapsed during rehearsals. I swore him to silence. I made him promise. And he just agreed. He cried, Taehyung whispered. He cried like I've never seen him cry before. Jimin backed up, shaking his head like he could erase the words from existence. I trusted him. Out of everyone, I thought Namjoon, he taught us how to be honest. And now you're telling me he's been lying to me this whole time. Jungkook cut in sharply. He didn't lie, he carried that secret like it was eating him alive. No, Jimin snapped. Don't defend him, don't make him a martyr when the three of you let me rot in the dark while you all played God. Enough, Taehyung exploded, rising to his feet. You want honesty? Here it is. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to need you. I didn't want to see your eyes filled with pity every time I forgot a lyric or lost my breath after one damn dance move. I didn't want you to watch me die in slow motion. The words hung in the air like a blade still swinging. Silence pressed hard against the walls. I watched my father die like that, Taehyung said, his voice cracking now, no longer angry but broken. I was 13. He wasted away in a hospital bed, lungs full of tumors, eyes empty. The man who raised me, who used to sing to me, couldn't breathe on his own by the end. I promised myself I'd never let anyone see me that way, not even you. Jimin swallowed hard, throat burning. You could have trusted me with the truth. I couldn't, Taehyung said, because I knew once I told you I'd fall apart. And what about me? Jimin asked, quieter now, almost afraid of his own voice. Don't you think I fell apart too? Every unanswered message, every empty room, every sleepless night wondering if you were already gone, I did fall apart, Taehyung. Alone. Jungkook sat down, elbows on knees, rubbing his temples like he was holding his head together by sheer force. This is exactly what Namjoon was afraid of. Jimin turned to him. What do you mean? Jungkook glanced up. He said once we start unraveling the truth, we might never come back from it. He was right, Taehyung said bitterly, because there's more. Jimin's stomach dropped, more than the surgery. Taehyung looked at Jungkook. Jungkook looked away. What else? Jimin demanded. What else have you kept from me? Taehyung hesitated, then slowly he reached for his phone, unlocked it and pulled up a voice memo. He pressed play. A man's voice filled the room. I'm sorry, Taehyung, the cancer has shown early signs of metastasis. It's slow, but it's spreading. We'll need to start a new treatment protocol. Chemotherapy, possibly radiation. There's still time, but not much. Jimin froze. That was recorded 4 days ago, Taehyung said. I didn't want to tell either of you, but now. No, Jimin said, voice shaking. This can't, you said it was gone, you said they took it all out. They did, Taehyung said, but it came back, or maybe it was already spreading, I don't know. Jungkook stood up abruptly. We need to go to Seoul. Namjoon said if it ever got worse there was someone he trusted, a researcher, experimental treatments, a clinical trial, off the books. Quiet. Jimin laughed bitterly, the sound sharp as glass. Of course, more secrets, another shadow clinic, maybe this time you'll bring Yoongi and leave me behind completely. Don't do that, Jungkook growled. Don't make this a war between us. You think I wanted this? I've been watching him get weaker for weeks while pretending everything's fine. I held his fucking hand through the night when the pain made him scream. I lied to everyone we know, every day, because I had to. Why? Jimin asked, furious. Why was it always you? Because he didn't ask you, Jungkook shouted. The silence that followed was sharp, like a slap. I didn't ask Jimin, Taehyung said softly, because if I had, he would have said yes, without hesitation. He would have dropped everything, thrown away his life to stay by my side, and I couldn't let him do that. Jimin's chest heaved. So you chose Jungkook because he's colder, because he knows how to disappear. Taehyung looked at him, eyes wet. I chose Jungkook because I knew he could carry it without breaking. I wasn't sure you could. Jimin laughed again, but there was no joy in it. so I was too emotional to trust, too fragile, is that it? You feel everything too deeply, Taehyung said. It's why I love you, but it's also why I was afraid to tell you I was dying. The word hung heavy between them, dying. Jimin's legs gave way and he sat down on the floor, eyes empty. I'm not sure I can forgive you, he said, staring at the polished wood. Taehyung sank to his knees in front of him. I'm not asking you to, I'm just asking you not to leave. Jungkook watched them quiet now, his hands curled into fists. After a long silence, Jimin spoke again, eyes still down. If we're doing this, if we're really going to Seoul to meet this doctor. We are, Jungkook said, already packing his bag. Then I want to talk to Namjoon first, Jimin said. Face to face, no more recordings, no more rumors, I want to hear the truth from his mouth. Taehyung nodded. He's waiting for us, he said, to come when we were ready. Jimin looked up. I'm not ready, he said, but I'm coming anyway. And outside the suite, the city pulsed with a million lives untouched by this secret war. But for the three of them, everything had changed, forever. The black car sliced through Seoul's sleepless streets like a phantom, headlights smearing over slick pavement. Taehyung sat on the right, his head resting against the window, eyes closed, not asleep, just trying not to fall apart. Jungkook stared straight ahead, fists clenched on his knees. Jimin in the middle didn't speak. The silence in the car wasn't peaceful, it was war before the first shot. They arrived at the building just after midnight. It wasn't Big Hit. It wasn't even a hospital. A nondescript tower in mapogu, glass and concrete like 100 others, but inside was the man who had once been their compass. Namjoon. The security guard didn't ask questions, he recognized them. Of course he did. Even after months in hiding, even with Taehyung gaunt and half his weight, they were still them. The elevator ride to the 18th floor was suffocating. Jimin's heart pounded like war drums, every beat said betrayal, every breath screamed, why didn't you tell me? The door slid open. Namjoon was already there. He stood by the tall windows, silhouetted by the neon skyline, his hands clasped behind his back. He didn't turn when they entered. For a long moment, no one moved. Then he spoke. You came. His voice wasn't the voice of their leader anymore. It was older, rougher, as if the weight of silence had worn it down. You knew, Jimin said. The words came out like venom. You knew he was sick. You let me look you in the eye and ask if everything was okay. You lied to me. Namjoon finally turned. His face was thinner, eyes hollow, but his gaze was as sharp as ever. I protected him. No, Jimin snapped, stepping forward. You protected your own sense of control. You watched us burn and told yourself it was mercy. Namjoon didn't flinch. If I told you, you would have done what you always do, give everything. I couldn't let that happen. You don't get to decide that for me, Jimin growled. You're not gods, you're not our father, you're not our leader anymore. Silence. Then Jungkook spoke, voice low. Tell him, Namjoon, all of it. Namjoon's jaw tensed. He walked to the table, picked up a folder and tossed it toward them. Taehyung caught it with shaky hands, flipped it open. Scans, blood panels, prognoses. Jimin saw the words stage II pulmonary sarcoma, metastasis probable, aggressive growth rate. His knees buckled and he sat down hard. You said there was time, Jimin whispered. There was, Namjoon said. Maybe there still is, that's why I reached out to her. Taehyung looked up, brows furrowed. Who? Namjoon hesitated. Jenny Kim. Jungkook's head jerked. What? Namjoon stepped back as if readying himself for the inevitable explosion. She's working with a private lab overseas, Switzerland. They've been developing a gene therapy model, early stage but promising. You brought Jenny into this, Jungkook shouted, rising from his chair. She offered help, Namjoon said. Not fame, not gossip, not attention, just help. She's not even a doctor, Jimin spat. She's a liaison, Namjoon shot back. She lost her mother to the same cancer, Jimin. She's been funding this research for years. When I reached out to her, she already knew about Taehyung. Taehyung froze. What do you mean she knew? Namjoon exhaled. She saw the hospital transfer. She has people. It didn't leak because she stopped it. She's the reason no one outside this room knows. Jimin stood slowly, voice trembling with rage. How many people outside this room knew before I did? Namjoon didn't answer. Jungkook slammed his hand on the table. You should have come to me, Taehyung, if this research is real, if it could save him, why wait until now? Namjoon looked at Taehyung. Because he told me to let it go, he said. He said he didn't want to be a test subject, he said he was tired. Taehyung closed the folder, didn't speak, couldn't. Jimin turned to him, voice barely a whisper, is that true? Taehyung nodded. You were going to let yourself die, Jimin said, without telling me, without even trying. I tried, Taehyung whispered, tears in his eyes, but I got tired of fighting when I couldn't even sing anymore. Jimin stepped forward, grabbed Taehyung by the collar, voice cracking. You don't get to give up, you don't get to leave me behind again. Taehyung didn't push him away, he just broke. I'm scared, Jimin, he said, I'm so fucking scared. And then Jimin was holding him, tight, like he could anchor him to life just by refusing to let go. Namjoon turned away, silent again. After minutes that felt like eternity, Jungkook broke the silence. What's the plan? Namjoon faced them, eyes heavy. We fly to Zurich, 4 days from now, Jenny will meet us there, the lab's expecting us. No press, Jimin said coldly, no photos, no leaks. Already handled, Namjoon replied. Good, Jimin said, because if this gets out I swear. It won't, Namjoon interrupted, not from me. Jungkook nodded, I'll handle Taehyung's travel. You handle the doctors. Namjoon hesitated, and you, Jimin. Jimin stared at him, then slowly walked over. He stood face to face with Namjoon. Then punched him square in the jaw. Namjoon stumbled back, gripping his face, not fighting back, not angry, just sad. Jimin's voice shook, that's for lying to me. And then softer, and for letting me think I was alone. Namjoon nodded once, I deserved that. The air was heavy with pain, with broken trust and buried love. But for the first time in weeks there was a plan. And hope, fragile flickering, refused to die. Even as the night darkened, the flame burned. The snow was already falling when their plane touched down in Zurich. Sharp wind sliced across the runway, biting through coats and flesh as if to remind them that some places don't care how broken you are when you arrive. They didn't speak much on the way to the chalet. Jimin sat next to Taehyung, their hands brushing occasionally but never truly finding each other. Jungkook sat in the front with the driver, headphones in though no music played. Namjoon followed in a separate car. Jimin insisted on it. The silence between them hadn't healed, not really. The punch may have said what words couldn't, but the wound went deeper than one night could mend. The chalet Jenny had arranged was remote, too remote. No reception, no Wi-Fi, just the sound of wind and the smell of pine and stone. She was already there when they arrived, sitting in front of the fire, sipping something dark from a porcelain cup. Taehyung, she said softly when she saw him, not with pity, but with recognition. She didn't stand, didn't rush over to touch him. She looked at him like a mirror might, reflecting back the pain he tried so hard to conceal. Jenny, he said, surprised at how natural her name still felt on his tongue. You've lost weight, she said gently. I've lost a lot more than that. A shadow passed over her expression. She nodded once, then looked at the others. Jungkook, Jimin. Jungkook gave her a quick nod, stiff and unreadable. Jimin didn't say anything. His arms were crossed. His eyes burned with the kind of restraint that looks like calm but is really rage wearing a tuxedo. They unpacked in silence. Taehyung's room overlooked a frozen lake. He sat on the windowsill for hours, watching the ice pulse under moonlight, barely noticing the way his breath fogged the glass. Jenny called them together the next morning. They sat in the kitchen, wood cracking in the stove, a spread of documents and vials laid out across the table. She wore gloves, her voice was clinical now. This is called RT-451, it's a vector-based gene therapy, still in human trials, illegal to administer in South Korea. The treatment targets the mutation driving Taehyung's tumor growth. It doesn't kill the cancer, it tells it to stop replicating. Does it work? Jungkook asked. In theory, she replied. On rats, yes, on humans, maybe. One patient made it to full remission, 2 others died from organ failure, the rest are in progress. Taehyung closed his eyes, so I have a 1 in 5 chance. Jenny met his gaze, roughly. Jimin stood abruptly. This is insane. We came here for hope, not a goddamn coin toss. No, Taehyung said, we came here because I already flipped that coin. When I walked into surgery the first time, I wasn't supposed to survive, but I did. Barely, Jimin shot back. You barely made it. You don't have to prove anything to anyone anymore, not to me, not to them, not even to yourself. Taehyung's voice was calm but steady. I'm not trying to prove anything, I'm just trying to live on my own terms. And what if you die on those terms? Jimin asked, choking. Do I just sit here and clap because you got to die the way you wanted? Jungkook leaned forward, tone sharp. He's not dying, he's choosing to fight, that's the whole point. Oh, now you care about choice, Jimin turned on him. Where was that energy when you and Namjoon made every decision for me? That's enough, Namjoon said from the doorway. They turned to him, he looked exhausted, he always looked exhausted now. No more blame games, he said. We're here, the treatment is real, the risks are real, and we don't have time to tear each other apart. Jimin glared at him. You're the last person who gets to talk about unity. Maybe, Namjoon said, but I'm still the one who got us here. A tense silence fell, then Jenny cleared her throat. We have to start tonight, she said. There's a 48-hour window to prime the immune system before the injection. If we miss it, we'll have to wait another 2 weeks. Taehyung nodded, then let's start. Jimin walked out. No one followed him. Outside, the snow had thickened. He stood by the edge of the lake, wind slicing through his coat like razors, his hands shook not from the cold. From fear. From love. From the unbearable truth that he might lose the only person who ever made him feel truly seen. Taehyung found him later that night. You hate me right now, he said. Jimin didn't turn. I hate that you're making me watch this. I didn't ask you to come, Taehyung said gently. Jimin finally turned, eyes fierce. You didn't have to, I would have followed you off a cliff. Taehyung looked at him then, really looked at him, and something inside him broke. I know. He stepped closer, reached for Jimin's hand, and this time, Jimin didn't pull away. Hold my hand tomorrow, Taehyung said, even if you hate me. Jimin didn't speak, but he didn't let go. The next day, the first dose was administered. It wasn't dramatic, no convulsions, no cinematic collapse, just a slow drip, a quiet beep from the monitor, and the collective weight of everyone in the room not breathing. Jenny monitored everything. Jungkook stood like a soldier. Namjoon paced. Jimin sat beside the bed, clutching Taehyung's hand like a lifeline. Hours passed. Then Taehyung opened his eyes. I'm still here, he whispered. Jimin let out a sob he hadn't realized he was holding. And outside the window, for the first time in days, the sun broke through the clouds. The tremors started 2 days after the first injection. It began with a twitch in Taehyung's right hand, subtle, almost dismissible, but it didn't stop. By midnight, he was burning up, curled in the fetal position in bed, drenched in sweat, teeth chattering, eyes bloodshot. Jimin was the first to notice he wasn't responding to his name. Taehyung, wake up, please, baby, wake up. Jungkook bolted from the kitchen when he heard Jimin scream. Jenny followed seconds later, her face instantly shifting into calm, clinical resolve. Move, she ordered, snapping on gloves as she pushed past Jimin, who was visibly trembling. Jenny pulled back the blankets, revealing Taehyung's flushed skin and violent shaking. His lips were cracked and his chest heaved with short, shallow gasps. He's septic, she said. This is an immune system backlash. I need the emergency meds from the black case now. Jungkook tore through the supply bags like a man possessed, tossing open the hard black case and shoving it into her hands. Jimin stood there frozen, heart jackhammering, unable to make sense of anything except the fact that Taehyung's eyes were open but empty. Namjoon appeared in the doorway, panting. What's happening? Jenny didn't look up. Side effects. Acute cytokine release. His body is either adapting or rejecting the therapy. We're going to find out in the next few hours. What can we do? Jimin asked, voice cracking. Jenny inserted the needle into the IV port. Just stay. So they did. For 13 hours. Jimin never left the bedside. He whispered stories to Taehyung's unconscious form, stories about the past, about concerts and laughter and stupid hotel games, about Christmases they'd spent on airplanes, about all the things they still hadn't done. Jungkook stood in the corner, face blank, but his hands were clenched so tightly that his nails left crescent moons in his palms. Namjoon handled logistics, doctors on standby, flights in case of evacuation, a helicopter if it got worse, but his eyes rarely left the room. Taehyung drifted in and out of lucidity, at one point grabbing Jimin's shirt and whispering, "Don't let me be forgot." "You won't be," Jimin said fiercely. "You're the last thing anyone could ever forget." Later, when the fever finally broke and Taehyung's breathing evened out, Jenny collapsed into a chair, wiping her forehead with the back of her wrist. "He made it through the storm," she said. "The therapy is working. We won't know to what extent for a few more days, but he's responding." Jungkook slumped against the wall. Namjoon sat down hard on the floor. Jimin just cried. That night, while Taehyung slept, Jimin went outside and stood alone in the snow. The wind howled across the frozen lake, and still he didn't shiver. There was too much fire inside his chest. Jungkook found him an hour later. "Taehyung," he said, voice low, "you should come in, you'll get sick." "I already am," Jimin said, "sick of being the last to know, sick of watching people I love destroy themselves in silence." Jungkook stepped closer. "We didn't mean to hurt you." "You always say that," Jimin snapped, turning to face him. "You didn't mean to, but you did, over and over, and you expect me to forgive you just because it was done in the name of love." "I don't expect anything," Jungkook said evenly, "but if you want the truth, I'll give it to you." Jimin blinked. "What truth?" "I was in love with him first." Jimin's breath caught. "I was 18, Jungkook continued. "It was stupid and quiet and so loud in my chest I couldn't sleep. I watched him fall for you, watched him choose you, and I swallowed it down like poison because that's what loyalty is supposed to look like, right?" Jimin didn't speak, couldn't. Jungkook went on, "So when he told me he was sick, I didn't hesitate. I thought maybe this was my chance to mean something to him, even if it was only as the one who saved him." The words hit Jimin like stones. "I loved him too," Jimin said finally, his voice raw. "Still do, but not the way you think. It was never clean, it was always complicated. I wasn't chosen, I was just the one who stayed." Jungkook turned away, kicking snow off his boot. "Well, now you know." "You could have told me," Jimin said. "We could have talked." "We're talking now." "No," Jimin said, "we're bleeding." Neither of them moved. Until a voice, hoarse and fragile, broke the night behind them. "You're both wronged." Taehyung stood at the doorway, wrapped in a blanket, pale and shaking, but awake. "You weren't just the one who stayed," he said to Jimin. "You were the one I couldn't live without, and Jungkook, you weren't the one who saved me, you were the one I wanted to protect." "Why didn't you say anything?" Jungkook asked, tears gathering now. "Because I was scared," Taehyung whispered. "And because if I said it out loud, then one of you would walk away, and I'd rather die than lose either of you." Jimin stepped forward. "You might still die." Taehyung nodded. "I know." And then, in that frozen silence, he looked at them both with eyes that burned like the sun through ice. "But if I do, I want to go knowing I was loved by the two people who knew me best, even if I never deserved either of you." That night, the three of them sat by the fire. No answers. No closure. Just raw truth, unwrapped and bleeding on the floor between them. And somehow it was enough. The storm came without warning. The wind slammed into the chalet like fists, rattling the windows, shaking the wooden beams. Snow turned violent, horizontal, blinding. For 3 days they were trapped. No roads, no signals, no escape. But the real storm was inside. Taehyung was stable, barely. His fever would spike, then vanish. His legs ached, his eyes burned, and sleep came in cruel waves, half rest and half nightmare. But he held on. The drug was doing something, whether it would kill him or save him still hung in the balance. Jimin watched him sleep every night, memorizing his breathing like a prayer. He was afraid to close his own eyes, afraid that when he opened them, Taehyung would be gone. On the 3rd day, Namjoon left. He didn't say goodbye. He simply packed a bag and disappeared through the back door in the middle of the storm, a note left on the kitchen table in his quiet, precise handwriting. "I was never meant to lead you through this. I've done enough damage. Take care of each other. Don't come looking." Jimin crumpled the note and threw it into the fire. Taehyung barely blinked when they told him. He only said he never could stay when it got too real. But the silence Namjoon left behind was deafening. He had always been their shield, their strategist, the one who bore the guilt no one else had the strength for, and now he was gone. Jenny did her best. The second round of treatment had been scheduled to begin that morning, but with the storm, the final dose was delayed. Too risky, she said. If we lose power mid-infusion, the risk of cardiac collapse triples. So they waited. Hours turned to days, tension frayed nerves like wire. On the fourth night, Jimin found something. A small leather journal tucked under the floorboard in the room Namjoon had been using. It was old, battered. Inside, the handwriting was familiar, controlled, thoughtful. Namjoon had been writing letters. To each of them. Jimin opened the one with his name first. His hands shook as he unfolded the page. Jimin, I've never met anyone who loves the way you do, recklessly, fully, without pause. It terrifies me because I've seen what this world does to people like you. It breaks them, it uses them up, and still you give and give and give. I lied to protect you, yes, but mostly I lied because I knew the moment I told you the truth, you offer your heart and lungs and soul just to keep Taehyung alive. You'd have nothing left, and I couldn't watch that happen. I'm sorry for choosing silence. You didn't deserve that. RM. Jimin read it 3 times before folding it back into the journal. He didn't cry, he didn't speak. He just stared at the fire. The next night the power failed. The lights flickered once, twice, then died. The heater groaned to a halt. The machines monitoring Taehyung's vitals went dark. Jenny's voice was calm but sharp. Get the emergency generator now. Jungkook was already moving. He'd studied the setup with Namjoon days ago. Within minutes, the soft hum of backup power returned and the machines beeped to life again. But Taehyung didn't. His eyes didn't open. His breathing was shallow, too shallow. Jenny moved fast, checked his pulse, his pupils. He's crashing, she said. Prep the epinephrine if he slips into shock. No, Jimin said. Jenny turned startled. What? Let me talk to him. She hesitated, then stepped back. Jimin sat on the bed, took Taehyung's hand, cold and limp, in his. Hey, he whispered, you don't get to leave yet. Taehyung didn't move. Look at me, please, Jimin said, voice breaking. If you can hear me, just twitch a finger, anything. Nothing. Do you remember Busan? Jimin asked, choking on the memory. We were 17, you had that stupid blue sweater with the hole in the sleeve, and we danced barefoot on the beach at 3 a.m. You said if you ever died young, that's where you wanted your ashes. But I'm not taking you there, I refuse to carry you. If you want to see that beach again, you walk beside me. The monitor beeped faster. A flicker. A twitch. Taehyung's eyes opened. Barely. But they opened. Jungkook exhaled so hard it sounded like a sob. Jenny moved fast, stabilizing his vitals. The worst had passed, but the edge had been too close, too real. Afterwards, Taehyung whispered something to Jimin. Jimin leaned closer. What? Taehyung's voice was sandpaper and smoke. Did you read mine? It took Jimin a second to realize. Namjoon had written him a letter too. Jimin went back to the journal that night, found the letter with Taehyung's name on it. He didn't read it. He walked to Taehyung's room and placed it on the bedside table. I think you need to read it for yourself, he said, but not tonight. Taehyung nodded slowly, thank you. And then, quietly, Jimin climbed into the bed beside him, wrapped his arms around Taehyung's fragile frame, held him like something precious that couldn't be replaced. Jungkook stood outside the doorway for a long time, watching. He didn't go in. He didn't interrupt. Instead, he went to the fire, opened the journal, and flipped to the last letter. It had his name on it. Jungkook, I don't know how to write to you. You've always been too many things at once, fierce and soft, angry and loyal, devastatingly silent. You carried the worst of it because you believed someone had to. I saw you sacrifice pieces of yourself to keep Taehyung breathing, and you never once asked for recognition. But this isn't your burden to carry alone, not anymore. You don't need to be the strong one all the time. You don't need to bleed quietly. You deserve to be saved too. RM. Jungkook closed the book slowly, then sat by the fire. And for the first time in years he cried, not just for Taehyung, not just for Namjoon, but for himself. The storm outside raged on. But inside the chalet, 3 men sat surrounded by the embers of everything they'd lost, everything they feared, and everything they still had left to fight for. Tomorrow the final dose would begin. One last roll of the dice. And none of them knew if Taehyung would survive it. Morning came like a thief, silent, slow, unwanted. The storm had calmed, but the world outside was whitewashed, heavy with snowdrifts and silence. Inside the chalet, the air was thinner, as if something sacred and terrifying was about to happen. Taehyung knew it the moment he woke up. He could feel it in his bones, in the hollowness in his chest, in the way Jenny's hands trembled ever so slightly as she prepped the final dose. "You don't have to do this," Jimin said quietly, standing behind him as he sat on the edge of the bed. His hand was on Taehyung's shoulder, firm and shaking at the same time. Taehyung didn't look up. "If I stop now, everything I've survived so far would mean nothing." "It doesn't have to mean anything," Jimin whispered. "It just has to end. You're not a symbol, you're not a lesson, you're just a man. I love that man, not the fighter, not the martyr, just you." Taehyung turned slowly. His eyes were tired, dark rings circling them like bruises. "What if the part of me you love doesn't survive this?" "Then I'll learn how to love what's left," Jimin said. Jenny entered, clipboard in hand. "We need to begin in 15 minutes. The compound has a 2-hour window once activated. After that, it becomes unstable." Jungkook walked in behind her. He hadn't spoken much since the journal. Now he looked Taehyung dead in the eye. "Do you still want to go through with it?" Taehyung nodded. No hesitation, Jungkook asked. "No," Taehyung said. "Then I'm staying," Jungkook replied, walking over and taking his place on Taehyung's other side. Jenny handed him a surgical glove. "If anything goes wrong, we'll need to." "I said I'm staying," Jungkook repeated. "Don't tell me what I already accepted." Jimin said nothing. He just climbed into the bed again and rested his forehead against Taehyung's shoulder. The IV was hooked. The final dose, nearly 3 times as potent as the previous, was pushed into the line. It began. Taehyung clenched his fists. His body arched slightly, then more. Jenny's voice cut through the silence like a scalpel. Heart rates climbing, oxygen stable, temperature spiking 40.3, 40.6, 41. Jimin looked up, eyes wide. "That's too high." "It's expected," she said. "This is the body fighting." "It looks like he's losing," Jungkook said, jaw clenched as he held Taehyung's hand. Taehyung's eyes were fluttering, his lips moving without sound. Then he screamed. It wasn't a cry of pain. It was a roar. Jenny jumped. Jimin recoiled. Jungkook didn't move. Taehyung's body buckled, sweat pouring from his skin like fever breaking from within. He grabbed Jimin's wrist so tightly it left bruises. Jimin didn't care. He was shaking violently now. Jenny leaned in. "We need to cool him down or we risk neural damage." "No," Taehyung rasped. "No machines, let me feel this." His voice was foreign, low, guttural, like something ancient clawing its way through a cage. "Jesus Christ," Jungkook whispered. "What the hell is happening to him?" "The therapy's rewriting his immune system," Jenny said. "This isn't like before, it's not just targeting cells anymore, it's rewriting code." "Code?" Jimin asked, breathless. "DNA," Jenny said. "It's changing him at the core." Taehyung's eyes flew open. Black. Just for a second. Then normal again. But it was enough to make the room go still. Did anyone else?" Jungkook stammered. Jenny stepped back slowly. "That's not possible." Taehyung gasped, his back arched again. Then, as suddenly as it started, he went still. No sound. No movement. The monitor flatlined. "Get the defib now," Jenny shouted, already moving. But Jimin was frozen. He didn't move. He didn't scream. He didn't cry. He just watched. Jungkook, on the other hand, panicked. "What are you waiting for? Bring him back." Jenny was already preparing the pads. But before she could place them, Taehyung sat up. Eyes wide. Breathing hard. As if he'd been drowning, and suddenly the world was air. "Don't touch me," he whispered. Jenny froze, her hand still hovered above his chest. "I saw it," Taehyung said, his voice shaking. Jimin moved first. "Saw what?" Taehyung looked at him. "Everything. After I saw what happens if I die now." Jungkook stepped closer, and... "You burn," Taehyung whispered to Jimin. "You lose everything, you forget how to sing, you break the group." Then he looked at Jungkook. "And you leave, you disappear, you go off-grid for years, you never come back." No, Jungkook said immediately, that's not I wouldn't. You already did, Taehyung said, in that version you did. Jenny took a breath, hallucinations during near-death experiences are common, you shouldn't take anything. It wasn't a hallucination, Taehyung said, it was a timeline. Jimin looked at him like he was unraveling. You're telling me you saw a vision of the future while dying, he asked. Taehyung nodded, not a vision, a memory from a version of me that didn't make it. That's impossible, Jenny muttered. But Jungkook said nothing. Because deep down he believed it. He'd seen Taehyung's eyes. And he knew. Something had changed. When Jenny rechecked the blood samples hours later, her face turned pale. His T cells, they've tripled, his white blood count is off the charts but stable, and the markers for the tumor. What? Jimin asked. They're gone, she said. Taehyung was in remission. Just like that. It didn't feel real, not at first. They were too numb to cry, too stunned to laugh. Until Taehyung spoke. I'm not done yet, he said, I'm not finished with this world. Jimin leaned in, pressing his forehead to his, then don't you dare leave me again. Taehyung smiled weakly, not until we've danced barefoot in Busan one more time. Jungkook stepped back staring at them. I need air, he said. He walked outside into the snow barefoot, no coat. Let the cold bite into his skin. And finally he screamed. Screamed for all the pain he had swallowed. For the love he couldn't hold. For the relief that came too late. He screamed until his knees hit the ice. And then finally he cried. And no one stopped him. Inside, Taehyung drifted to sleep. Alive. And outside, under the starlit sky, a boy made of scars finally let them show. Zurich felt too quiet now. The snow had stopped falling, the machines no longer beeped in panic, and Taehyung, alive, breathing, his color slowly returning, was asleep without pain for the first time in months. But inside the chalet, peace didn't settle. It just left room for everything else. Jungkook hadn't come back inside all night. He sat on the back porch wrapped in a blanket that did little to guard against the cold, his back against the railing, a half-smoked cigarette between his fingers. He hated smoking. It reminded him of his father, but tonight he didn't care. The taste was bitter, familiar, a punishment. When the door opened, he didn't turn, he didn't have to, the steps were too soft, too cautious. Jimin. You're going to get pneumonia, Jimin said softly. Maybe I deserve it, Jungkook replied. Jimin walked over, crouching beside him. That's a shitty thing to say. Jungkook let out a humorless laugh. Yeah, well, I've been full of shitty things lately. Jimin took the cigarette from his fingers and crushed it into the snow. I never saw you cry before, not like that. Jungkook wiped his face with the back of his sleeve, wasn't planning to. You've been holding it in so long, I thought maybe you forgot how. I didn't, Jungkook whispered, I just didn't think I was allowed. There was silence for a moment, thick, loaded. Then Jimin asked, why did you kiss him? Jungkook stiffened. I know you did, Jimin said, it wasn't a guess. Jungkook looked down. Before the treatment, one night he was crying, I thought he was asleep, I sat next to him, held his hand, told him he wasn't alone, and he pulled me in, just held me, and then he kissed me, soft, like he thought it would be the last thing he'd ever do. And you didn't stop him. I didn't want to. Jimin nodded, thank you. Jungkook blinked, what? For telling me, Jimin said, I don't hate you, Jungkook. You should. I almost do, Jimin admitted, but not for that. Then for what? For trying to love him in silence while tearing yourself apart, Jimin said, for thinking that's noble. Jungkook looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time didn't flinch. I never tried to steal him from you. I know, Jimin said, he wasn't something to steal. The door opened again. Taehyung stood in the frame, looking ghost-like and real all at once, his blanket trailing behind him like a cape. You're both being loud, he said, his voice hoarse but playful. Jungkook stood slowly, you should be in bed. I've been in bed for 3 months, Taehyung said, I want air. He walked past them and sat on the porch steps, staring at the lake. His hands trembled in his lap, but he ignored it. I remember it all, he said quietly. Jimin sat beside him, what? The kiss, the dreams, the silence, the pain. I remember what you said to me when I was unconscious, Jimin. I remember the way Jungkook carried me into the bathroom when I was too weak to stand. I remember how Namjoon never looked me in the eye again. Why are you saying all this now? Jungkook asked. Because I almost died with words still stuck in my throat, Taehyung said. I'm not making that mistake again. Jimin reached for his hand, then say it. Taehyung looked at them both, eyes heavy, tired, unflinching. I loved both of you in different ways, at different times, but never at the same time. Jungkook swallowed hard, and now. Taehyung took a long breath. Now I don't know, but I want to find out. Jimin nodded, okay. Jungkook sat on the other side of him, so where does that leave us? Taehyung smirked weakly. 3 idiots on a porch freezing our asses off trying to navigate emotions we don't understand. They all laughed. The sound was raw, a little broken but real. Later inside, Taehyung pulled out a notebook. The pages were wrinkled, stained from hospital nights and tears. It's my goodbye book, he said, letters I wrote when I thought I wouldn't wake up. Jimin froze. Why are you showing us this now? Because I didn't die, Taehyung said, and it feels wrong to let these words rot in a drawer. He handed Jimin the first letter. It began, to the only boy who ever saw through the glass. Jimin's hands trembled as he read. He cried before he reached the second paragraph. He passed it to Jungkook after a while. Jungkook read it silently, his jaw clenched so tightly a vein pulsed in his neck. Then Taehyung handed him the second letter. To the shadow I followed until I forgot I was light too. You loved us both, Jungkook whispered. Taehyung nodded, but not the same way. You were gravity and Jimin was fire. Jungkook wiped his face. Which one wins? Taehyung smiled sadly. It's not about winning anymore, it's about surviving. The next day, the doctors from the Swiss clinic confirmed the results. No detectable cancer. Not remission. Eradication. Jenny cried quietly when she read the report. Taehyung cried too. But Jimin didn't. Not until he was alone. He went into the bathroom, turned on the tap and sobbed into his hands. The weight lifted too fast, too much. When he came out, Taehyung was waiting. You okay? He asked. Jimin nodded. No, but I will be. Taehyung took his face in his hands. You already are, he whispered. And for the first time since the diagnosis, they both believed it. But Jungkook wasn't in the room anymore. When Jimin checked the hallway, the kitchen, the porch, he was gone. His bag, his jacket, his journal, all missing. There was only a note. One line. Let me find myself before I try to be something for someone else. Jimin stood there for a long time, staring at the empty space where Jungkook used to be. Taehyung came up behind him. Rested his head on his shoulder. He'll come back, he said. I know, Jimin whispered. And then after all the storms, all the silence, all the breaking. For a few precious seconds. There was peace. 6 months later, Seoul was loud again. Not just with music, but with questions. Rumors buzzed like mosquitoes in the heat. Where had they gone? Why had Taehyung disappeared? Was Jimin really seen in Zurich with him? Had Jungkook left the group? Nothing had been confirmed, nothing denied. It was the silence that kept the world hungry. Taehyung had returned to the city without a press release. No fanfare, no cameras, just him in black and beige wearing a scarf he didn't need, walking past the Han River with music in his ears and Jimin 2 steps behind him. They hadn't said the word relationship, not once. They didn't need to. Everything between them had transformed into something beyond labels, fragile, unspoken but real. They held hands in private, cried in quiet places, slept side by side, still afraid to close their eyes some nights, not because of nightmares but because of how much peace scared them after everything. But Jungkook was still missing. No one had heard from him, not Namjoon, not the company, not even Yoongi. His phone was dead, his accounts untouched. He'd vanished like a ghost, refusing to haunt the place he died in. Taehyung blamed himself. Jimin knew this. He'll come back, Jimin said one night as they lay on the roof of their building, wrapped in a single blanket, the city stretching endlessly below. You keep saying that, Taehyung replied, staring at the stars, but what if he doesn't want to? He left to find himself, Jimin said. That means he's still looking. But what if he doesn't like what he finds? Then we help him carry it. Taehyung closed his eyes. I miss him, not just what we had, I miss him, his laugh, the way he used to scold me when I forgot to drink water, the way he looked at me like I was something worth staying alive for. You are, Jimin said, pressing his lips against Taehyung's temple. You always were. They didn't say anything after that. Until the letter came. It wasn't emailed or texted. It was handwritten on a crumpled hotel envelope delivered by an assistant with no explanation. Jimin opened it in the kitchen. It read, I've been in Morocco, working on music I might never release. I miss you, both of you. I'm not whole yet, but I'm not broken anymore either. I'm ready to come home, if there's still a home for me. Taehyung walked in just as Jimin finished reading it. Who was that? He asked. Jimin handed him the letter, watched his eyes move across the page, watched his chest rise and fall as emotion tightened every part of him. Taehyung looked up. Is it selfish to want him back? Jimin stepped closer. If it is, then I'm selfish too. Taehyung smiled. For the first time in weeks it reached his eyes. They didn't call him, didn't text. They just showed up at the airport 3 days later. He was already there. Jungkook stood alone at gate 3, hair longer, leaner, his arms more tattooed than before. He held a carry-on bag and a beat-up guitar case, and when he saw them he smiled, small, hesitant, terrified. Taehyung walked first, Jimin followed. No one spoke. Not until Taehyung reached him and placed a hand on his chest. I thought you wouldn't come back, he said. I almost didn't, Jungkook admitted. What changed? You. Jungkook's voice cracked. You survived, and I didn't want to keep being the version of me that left before knowing what that felt like. Jimin stepped closer. We missed you. Jungkook looked at him, eyes shining. I miss me too. They hugged, all three of them, right there, surrounded by strangers and announcements and fluorescent lights. People stared. A few took photos. They didn't care. Later in the car, Jungkook sat in the back seat, fingers tapping out invisible beats against his jeans. Did you ever read the last letter? He asked. Taehyung turned to him. The one you left on the porch. No, Jungkook said, the one Namjoon left you from the journal. Taehyung went quiet. Then he said, I couldn't. I was afraid it would change how I remembered him. You should read it, Jimin said. He left because he thought he'd ruined everything, but he also knew we'd survive, that you'd survive. Back at the apartment, they made tea. No music, no drama, just the soft hum of the city outside the window and the distant memory of pain finally fading into something quieter. Taehyung finally opened the letter that night. He didn't tell them what it said. He just sat there silent, reading it over and over until the words blurred. Jimin watched him from the hallway, Jungkook from the kitchen. No one pushed. No one needed to. The next morning, Taehyung stood in front of the mirror. He removed his shirt. The scar was still there, thin, pale, quiet. He traced it with his fingers, then looked over at the tattoo on Jungkook's neck, still there, just visible under the collar. Then he turned to Jimin, who had no scar, no tattoo. Just eyes that had seen too much, and a heart that still beat loudly anyway. I think I'm ready to sing again, Taehyung said. Jungkook looked up, then let's write. Jimin smiled, and I'll make sure the world hears it. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't perfection. But it was a beginning. And after everything they'd survived. That was more than enough.